This is Ancient Athens, or rather it's a simulation of Ancient Athens that is powered by the Ubisoft Assassin's Creed Odyssey History Tour. What you see here is the Parthenon, and it contained the treasury of Athens. This treasury was basically, much like the Federal Reserve building is today, the epicenter of the international monetary system. And the silver drachmae was really the dollar of the Mediterranean. And finally, here you see a simulation of the famous port of Piraeus, where sailors from all over the Mediterranean went to trade, but also to visit their bankers. So basically, to stick with the present day analogy, this was the first incarnation of Wall Street. Hey, I'm Joeri, and you have stumbled across the Money and Macro YouTube channel, which is indeed all about money and macroeconomics. If you're interested in these subjects, then consider subscribing and keep watching this video, which is all about the monetary economics of ancient Athens. This includes the rise of the silver drachmae to ancient reserve currency status, and how the Athenian financial sector came to be at the center of what could arguably be the first monetary empire of human civilization. Ancient Athens was one of the largest cities of its time. However, the Athenians had one big problem. They did not have enough land to grow the grain needed to feed Athenian bellies. So, they had to import it. And for this, ships were needed. But buying a single ship was a big risk. Sure, if the voyage was successful, the profits would easily be able to cover the initial investment. But the chance of a ship sinking was considerable, and that cost would ruin you for life. So how should one go about it to finance such a voyage? And even if you make it to the foreign port, what currency should you use to pay for the grain imports? These dilemmas might have been why money and finance went through some of their first major developments here in ancient Athens. You see, before Athens, big cities in Mesopotamia had monetary systems with a dual core of silver and grain as highest forms of money. However, both had their problems in trade. Grain can better be used to make bread, and silver needs to be weighted and was pretty scarce. Therefore, the monetary systems in these cities evolved such that an outer layer of accounts recorded on clay tablets came to enclose the inner monetary layer of grain and silver. Clay tablets were used to record debts that were denominated in silver and grain. And if you wanted to convert the clay tablet to grain or silver, the state had systems in place that made sure this could be done on request. Since tablets could easily be identified, created and traded within Mesopotamian cities, these tablets made excellent money. But for Athens, there were two major problems that prevented it from adopting the Mesopotamian monetary system. The first concerns its monetary core. Since grain had to be imported, it was so scarce that it couldn't be used as the supreme form of money, as it partially was in Mesopotamia. Silver, on the other hand, there was plenty, since our lucky Athenians had found massive silver depots just south of the city in the form of the famous Laurian silver mines. So yeah, it was basically not a surprise to anyone that they ended up building their monetary system on a silver core rather than a joint grain/silver core. However, then there was still another problem. Because grain needed to be imported, Athens relied much more on international trade than Mesopotamian cities. And it just so turns out to be that clay tablets, while being very convenient in local trade, were horrible for international trade. The reason for this is that they relied on the power of the state for their possible conversion into silver or grain. And since the Athenian state could hardly enforce this conversion in the Turkish cities where most grain came from, clay tablets just wouldn't work for Athens. So the Athenians adapted their monetary core even more. One of the major innovations the Athenians did compared to their ancient forerunners is that they took that silver from the mines and minted it into silver coins. This was a major innovation since when pure silver was used, traders had to weigh silver to make sure they got paid in full. What coinage really is a stamp by the state that helps citizens recognize how much silver there is in coins. And here you see the famous Athenian owl coin, or the silver drachmae. This was basically the dollar of the ancient Mediterranean. Athenian owl coins were found as far as Babylon, Arabia, southern Italy, Turkey, and even Egypt. Some cities even minted these same coins with their own city stamp on it. In fact, the Athenian owl came to symbolize money itself in the ancient world, kind of like how the dollar sign is often used to refer to money and not necessarily to the dollar specifically. The Athenians stored all their silver coins along with other riches in the famous Parthenon on top of Mount Acropolis. Having a lot of silver in a vault is one thing, but the question that then remains is, how do you get that money to circulate in the economy? One of the biggest problems in monetary economics is about how to get money to circulate. It shouldn't get stuck in the system, either because some spoiled rich kid is hoarding it all, or because some government bureaucrat has a fetish for austerity policies. Here also the Athenians came up with two ingenious innovations to pump drachmes into the economy and extract drachmes from it. One way coins were pumped into the economy was through state jobs. The unique thing about most of these state jobs is that they were never permanent. State jobs were jobs like inspecting imported goods in the harbor and being on the jury in court. The jobs were always temporary and citizens circulated through them. The handy-dandy thing about this is that it ensured a very equal flow of money into society. Then, for extracting money out of the economy, the government of Athens was one of the first to establish a proper tax system. Now then, you might wonder, what else did the government do to control the supply of silver in the economy? One downside of silver that people often think is actually an upside is that the supply of it is really rigid. As the economy expands and contracts, it's actually a great benefit if the money supply can expand and contract along with it. Otherwise, prices will be very volatile. And while contracting the silver supply is a bit tricky, the Athenians did have some pretty smart economic incentives in place to increase the quantity of silver when the economy expanded. Namely, they used the awesome power of the market. Basically, the state did not exploit all mining sites themselves. Instead, they sold mining rights for a specific time and specific patch of land to the highest bidder. As long as there is enough silver underground, there is a bigger incentive to bid for and explore underdeveloped mines if the price of silver is getting really high because the economy is expanding too quickly relative to the money supply. Vice versa, if there is inflation and hence silver is losing its value, there is at least no more incentive to mine even more silver. Finally, the awesome quality of silver coins is that they are both portable and that they do not depend on the credibility of the state. Because all traders at least knew someone who, while waiting at home, would love to get some silver jewelry. Therefore, silver coins are extremely useful to facilitate international trade. Take the clay tablets from Mesopotamia as a counterexample. In Mesopotamia, these clay tablets circulated as money because the state laws guaranteed that they could be exchanged for grain or silver. However, imagine how people would look at you if you showed up with a Mesopotamian clay tablet in southern Italy. But the silver coin is not where Athenian monetary innovation stopped. After all, they could not fully replace the clay tablets. While coins were just as easy to trade as clay tablets, they did not replace the other important function that these tablets had, and that was to record debts. There is a big role for debt-based money in the monetary system because it can be created and used where it is needed right away. For example, it can be used to finance great nautical trade adventures in the port of Piraeus. Therefore, it makes sense that it is here that the Wall Street of the ancient world emerged. But rather than sitting in fancy skyscrapers, the bankers of ancient Athens could be found in the streets with the common traders. Here, their weapon of choice was not the clay tablet, but rather it was a table. But okay, fine, it was not just a regular table. In all likelihood, they were modeled after the Salamis tablet, which is very similar in function to an abacus, which, while a powerful financial tool in the past, has now been relegated to being a children's toy. Ouch. To put it into modern day terms, the Greek special banker's table was basically used as a calculator, and it was known in Greek as a trapeza, hoping that I pronounced it correctly. And it's no coincidence that the Greek word for bank is still trapeza today. There is evidence that bankers in Piraeus accepted deposits, of which some was held in reserve, but also a lot was lent out. Some therefore consider it the start of modern banking as we know it. There is some evidence that the interest rates on loans were roughly 12% for safe loans and 22 to 30% for ship loans. This indicates that the banking system was probably pretty efficient, since loan sharks charge way more than that. It was not only bankers that made ship loans. These were also made by wealthy individuals and groups. Although the corporation as we know it had not yet been invented, the Athenians did often bundle their resources to finance complex commercial endeavors. Ship finance made the existence of Athens possible by financing the ships that imported grain. Think about it, even though you might have the money to finance a voyage, you would not want to take the risk, because if the ship sinks, you can forget about any future ventures. Basically, you don't want to put all your financial eggs in one basket. This is where the Greeks discovered how finance can make commerce possible by spreading risk. After all, for a wealthy banker who is financing 10 ship voyages, the profits of 9 successful ships can more than cover the cost for the one that sank. That is the reason why Greek shipping loans were structured in such a way that the lender was bearing the risk of a ship sinking. If the ship sank, the loans would be forgiven, but the cargo would then officially belong to the lender. Sure, it might be at the bottom of the sea, so it was no use to anyone. But this is why lenders charged interest rates to cover these losses. That is, assuming that people acted in good faith, of course. And I can tell you, financial fraud is not a modern invention. There was plenty of it in ancient Athens. Remember, there were no telephones, so how easy would it be to secretly sell your cargo abroad, sink your empty ship, and then ask the lender to go look for his or her cargo at the bottom of the sea, which they would never be able to find and would probably be devoured by sharks if they tried. Hence, just like in modern-day New York and London, the legal system in ancient Athens developed into a force to be reckoned with. Although this worked a bit differently in Athens then than it does now in our modern financial centers. Namely, if there was a dispute between two parties, they would have to plead to a group of jurors who would decide who was in the right. Let's say a captain that came back was claiming his ship was stolen, while his former banker was claiming the captain was a fraud. Both of them would have to make their case for a large group of jurors, consisting of random Athenian citizens. The jurors would then decide who had to pay up. What I find interesting here is that because financial contracts were drafted in Athens, even if two parties came from different Greek city-states, Athenian law would still apply to the contract. This is really similar to how New York judges sometimes are able to do crazy things like to order the seizure of ships belonging to a foreign state to cover debt payments for financial instruments that were issued in New York. If you don't believe me, then go ahead and ask Argentina. So, in ancient Athens, rather than using clay tablets, there was a large core of bank-issued money that encapsulated the core of silver coins. So yeah, what makes the monetary economics of ancient Athens so interesting? Well, for me, there are a couple of reasons. First, they popularized coinage, making it so much easier for traders to trade, since they didn't have to weigh their silver every time they wanted to strike a deal. Also, they had this really innovative way of introducing money into the economy via rotating state jobs, and also they popularized taxes further as a means of extracting money back out from the economy. Furthermore, they partly left money creation to the markets, partly by leasing out silver mines and partly by allowing something that resembles modern banking. Being the pioneers of international private banking, it makes sense that Athens was one of the first cities to have its courts influence global trade, even if it didn't involve any Athenians. Basically, you could say that ancient Athens had the first international monetary empire. And finally, here's a quick recap of that Athenian monetary system. It was built on silver coins which were minted by the state. Silver was mined by private miners that bought mining rights from the state. There was then a large layer of bank-created money and financial instruments that rested on top of the silver core, much like how it was not that long ago when we still had a gold standard, making the monetary system of ancient Athens a really nice template for all future monetary systems, which I will be exploring in future videos. If you don't want to miss them, then hit that subscribe button. At the moment, I'm producing bi-weekly content on finance, monetary economics, and macroeconomics, and more subscribers will help me to increase that frequency.